I teased my husband about his low salary. Now he's gone for good. The sound of the front door closing echoed through our empty apartment. I didn't register its significance at first. Just another Thursday evening, David returning from work. But this time was different. The usual shuffling of his briefcase, the jingle of keys tossed in the ceramic bowl I'd made in that pottery class last summer, his tired sigh as he loosened his tie, none of it followed. Instead, silence filled our home like a fog. "David?" I called out, looking up from my laptop where I'd been answering work emails. When no response came, I wandered from our living room toward the entryway. The ceramic bowl sat empty. No keys, no wallet, no wedding ring. Only a folded piece of paper with my name Emma written in his neat architectural handwriting. My stomach dropped before I even unfolded it. Somehow I already knew. Our story began like many others. A chance meeting at a mutual friend's housewarming party 6 years ago. David stood in the corner nursing a beer, looking utterly out of place among the rowdy finance bras and marketing girls who dominated our social circle. He wore a slightly wrinkled button-down with sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that showed the kind of lean strength that comes from real work, rather than hours at the gym. "You look about as comfortable as I feel," I said, sidling up next to him. He smiled, relief washing over his face at having someone to talk to. "That obvious, huh? Only to a fellow sufferer." We spent the rest of the night in that corner, discussing everything from our childhood pets to our career ambitions. Unlike the investment bankers and tech startup founders who usually populated these gatherings, David spoke with quiet passion about his work as a high school history teacher. "I know it's not glamorous," he'd said, a slight defensiveness creeping into his voice. "But when a kid really connects with something from the past, when they see how it relates to their own life, there's nothing like it." I found his earnestness refreshing. Working in digital marketing, I was surrounded by people constantly chasing the next trend, the next big account. David's commitment to something meaningful, something that wouldn't change with the algorithmic winds, was grounding. We married 2 years later in a small ceremony at a local botanical garden. My parents, successful business owners who had always pushed me toward financial achievement, seemed surprised but supportive of my choice. "He's steady," my mother said, which I took as high praise from a woman who measured most things by their return on investment. At first, our different career paths complemented each other. My rising income in the competitive marketing world meant we could afford a comfortable apartment in a neighborhood we loved. His teacher's schedule gave him summers and holidays free, allowing us to travel when I could take time off. We were happy. Or so I thought. The first cracks appeared 3 years into our marriage. I had just received a substantial promotion to senior account manager at my firm, with a salary increase that suddenly had me making nearly triple what David earned. "We should celebrate," I'd exclaimed, waving the offer letter in our kitchen that evening. "Dinner at Castellino's?" David smiled, but something flickered behind his eyes. "That's amazing, Em. I'm so proud of you." "This changes everything," I continued, pouring us both glasses of wine. "We can finally start looking at houses instead of this apartment. Maybe even in Westridge." He took a small sip. "Westridge? Isn't that a bit..." "A bit what?" "It's perfect. Good schools for when we have kids, close to downtown. And completely out of our price range," he finished. I laughed, the wine making me careless. "Not anymore. With this bump, we can absolutely afford it." "You mean you can afford it," he said quietly. I should have recognized the warning in his tone, should have seen how his shoulders tensed, how his fingers tightened around the wine glass. Instead, caught up in my own excitement, I made the first of many mistakes. "Oh, don't be so sensitive. We're a team, remember? What's mine is yours." He nodded, forced a smile, and suggested we order takeout instead of going out. "Let's save Castellanos for another night." That night became the template for many that followed, him pulling back, me pushing forward, neither of us addressing the growing imbalance between us. The incident that David referenced in his goodbye letter happened just 3 weeks ago, at a dinner party hosted by my new boss, Vanessa. She'd invited several team members and their partners to her sprawling penthouse overlooking the city. David had been reluctant to attend. It's just going to be another night of me standing around while everyone talks about marketing metrics and client acquisitions, he'd complained as he knotted his tie. Please, I'd begged. This is important. Vanessa specifically asked about you. He relented, as he always did when it came to supporting my career. We arrived at the penthouse, where waitstaff circulated with champagne flutes and canapés that probably cost more than David's daily salary. For the first hour, things went smoothly. David charmed a couple of my colleagues with stories about his students, and I felt that familiar pride in having a husband who could hold his own in any social situation, despite not sharing our professional background. Then came the moment that would ultimately break us. Vanessa had gathered everyone around her massive dining table, gleaming with crystal and silver. Conversation flowed along with expensive wine until someone asked about summer plans. We're thinking about Italy, I said. David has the whole summer off, and I've been dying to see the Amalfi Coast. Teacher schedules, said Craig, one of the firm's directors. Now that's a perk worth having. Though I guess there are trade-offs, right? He winked at David. Before David could respond, I jumped in with what I thought was light-hearted banter. Oh, absolutely. David trades financial security for 2 months of freedom every year. I tell him he'd better keep me happy so I can fund his Mediterranean dreams. The table erupted in laughter, all except David, whose face had gone completely still. Vanessa, sensing the sudden tension, quickly steered the conversation elsewhere, but the damage was done. The car ride home was silent. When we finally reached our apartment, David spoke. Do you really think that's our arrangement? That I'm some kind of kept man? David, come on. It was just a joke. Was it? 'Cause you've been making a lot of jokes lately about my salary, my career choice, as if teaching is something I settled for rather than chose. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. I'm proud of what you do, you know that. Are you? Because lately it feels like you're embarrassed by it. By me. That's ridiculous, I said, defensive rather than understanding. If I were embarrassed, why would I bring you to these events at all? As soon as the words left my mouth, I knew I'd made another mistake. The hurt in his eyes changed to something colder, more distant. I see, he said quietly. I'm an accessory, like your designer handbag or your new watch, something to bring out when it suits you. David, that's not what I meant. I think it's exactly what you meant, Emma. You don't see us as equals anymore. Maybe we never were. He slept in the guest room that night. The next morning, he was cordial but distant. I assumed naively that the whole thing would blow over like our previous arguments had. That we'd find our equilibrium again. I was wrong. I stood in our entryway, the letter trembling in my hands as I read David's careful, measured words. Emma, I've spent weeks trying to find the right words for this moment. Nothing seems adequate to explain the decision I've made, but I owe you at least this much. I'm leaving. Not just for a few days to clear my head, but permanently. Our marriage has become something I no longer recognize, and I think if you're honest with yourself, you'll admit the same. That night at Vanessa's wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a pattern that's been developing for years. Your success, which I have always genuinely celebrated, has gradually transformed into a wedge between us. Not because of the money itself, but because of how it's changed the way you see me, and perhaps more importantly, how it's changed the way I see myself when I'm with you. I chose teaching because I believe in its value, not because I lacked ambition or ability to do something more lucrative. For years, I thought you understood that. Lately, I've realized you merely tolerated it, waiting perhaps for me to grow up and pursue something more aligned with your vision of success. I don't blame you for wanting more, but I can't continue living as though my contribution to our partnership is somehow less valuable because it can't be measured in dollars or reflected in the neighborhoods we can afford to live in. I've taken only what belongs to me. The joint account is untouched. I've transferred my portion to a separate account, but everything we saved together remains available to you. I've paid my share of next month's expenses as well. Please don't try to contact me for now. I'm staying with Mark until I figure out my next steps. I've asked him not to share details with you or our mutual friends. I truly hope you find what you're looking for, Emma. I hope someday you find someone whose definition of success matches yours in all the ways mine couldn't. David. My legs gave way as I finished reading. I sank to the floor, letter clutched against my chest, the reality of what had happened washing over me in waves of nauseating clarity. David was gone. Really gone. And I had pushed him away, one careless comment at a time. The first week passed in a blur of denial and desperate attempts to reach him. I called his phone, disconnected, emailed repeatedly, no response, and even showed up at his school during lunch period, only to be told by an uncomfortable colleague that he had requested emergency personal leave for the remainder of the semester. I cornered Mark outside his apartment building, but he remained frustratingly loyal to his friend. He's not ready to talk, Emma. You need to respect that. Just tell me if he's okay, I pleaded. Mark's expression softened slightly. He's not okay, but he will be. The implication was clear. He would be okay without me. By the second week, denial gave way to anger. Who was he to make this unilateral decision? To walk away from 3 years of marriage without even trying to work things out? I composed blistering emails detailing his cowardice, his inability to communicate, his insecurity about my success, never once acknowledging my own role in our collapse. I never sent them, because by the third week, as I moved through our apartment like a ghost, I began to see evidence of my failures everywhere. The shelf of history books I'd teased him about collecting. Another dead president biography, thrilling. The modest watch his students had gifted him upon receiving a Teacher of the Year award, which I'd suggested he keep for casual occasions, rather than wear to important business events. The cooking classes he'd signed us up for that I'd frequently canceled because of work commitments. Small moments of dismissal and disrespect that I had disguised as playful ribbing or practical considerations. Each one a tiny cut that accumulated over time had severed something vital between us. It was Olivia, my oldest friend and most ruthless truth-teller, who finally forced me to confront what I'd done. You became a snob, Em, she said bluntly over coffee a month after David left. I've been wanting to tell you for a while. I'm not a snob, I protested weakly. I just wanted us to enjoy the benefits of my hard work. Did you ever ask David what he wanted, or did you just assume he'd fall in line with your vision? The question stung because I knew the answer. I had stopped asking what he wanted years ago, convinced that my preferences, informed by my growing income and professional status, were objectively better, more sophisticated. I had appointed myself the decision-maker in our relationship without ever officially declaring it. He loved you exactly as you were when you met, Olivia continued. Even when you were making entry-level money and living in that terrible studio with the leaky ceiling. But somewhere along the way, you stopped loving him as he was. You started seeing him as a project, something to improve or apologize for. I never meant to make him feel that way, I whispered. Intentions don't matter as much as impact, Em. And the impact was that you made him feel small in his own marriage. That night, I pulled out our wedding album for the first time since David left. There we were, beaming at each other under an arbor of twisted vines and white flowers. I remembered how he'd looked at me that day like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. When had that look changed to one of wariness? When had his smile become guarded around me? When had I stopped noticing? 6 weeks after David left, I did something I hadn't done in years. I visited his classroom. School was in session, and I slipped into the back row while he was in the middle of a lecture on the civil rights movement. He hadn't seen me enter, giving me the chance to observe him in his element. He was magnificent. David moved around the front of the classroom with an energy and confidence I rarely saw at home anymore. He engaged his students with thoughtful questions, listened intently to their responses, and wove their insights into a tapestry of historical context that brought the past alive in that small room. These teenagers, usually dismissive of anything that wasn't on their phones, were leaning forward in their seats, hands raised, eager to contribute to the discussion he was masterfully orchestrating. This was what he had tried to tell me about. This was the value he created that couldn't be quantified in a paycheck or displayed in a luxury purchase. When the bell rang, students filed out, several stopping to ask him quick questions or thank him for something. He answered each one with genuine attention, remembering details about their particular interests or struggles that showed he saw them as individuals. Finally, the room emptied, and he looked up to find me standing there. The warmth drained from his face, replaced by a careful neutrality that hurt more than anger would have. "Emma," he said, neither welcoming nor dismissive. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to see you," I said simply. "To apologize." He gestured to a student desk, and I sat, feeling suddenly like I was the one being evaluated. "I'm listening," he said. I had prepared a speech, but seeing him here, in the place where he did his most meaningful work, all my carefully crafted explanations seemed hollow. "I was wrong," I said instead, "about everything that matters." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, but he remained silent. "I saw you just now with your students. You were right all along about what you do, about why it matters, and I was too blinded by my own narrow definition of success to see it. This isn't just about my job, Emma. I know. It's about respect, about partnership, about seeing the person you love for who they are, not who you want them to be." I swallowed hard. I failed at all of that. For the first time, his expression softened slightly. "Why now?" he asked. "What changed?" "I did," I said. "Or I'm trying to. These weeks without you have been clarifying. I've had to look at myself, at who I've become. I don't like what I see." He nodded slowly, but I could tell he was still guarded. After all, words were easy. I had used plenty of them over the years, while my actions told a different story. "I'm not asking you to come back," I continued, surprising myself with the truth of it. "I don't have that right, but I needed you to know that I understand now what I did wrong. And I'm sorry. Truly sorry." The silence between us stretched, filled with the ghosts of our shared past and the uncertainty of separate futures. "Thank you for saying that," he finally said. "I appreciate you coming here." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. It was a start. As I stood to leave, he spoke again. "Emma, I hope you find what you're looking for." The same words from his letter, but somehow they felt different now. Less final, perhaps. Or maybe that was just wishful thinking. Spring turned to summer. I threw myself into therapy, finally confronting the ways my upbringing had shaped my views on success and worth. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected, people whose lives followed different paths than the upward corporate trajectory I'd been so fixated on. I even volunteered at a local literacy program, helping adults who had fallen through the cracks of the educational system. The work was humbling and rewarding in ways that no promotion or raise had ever been. David and I communicated sporadically, first through brief formal emails about practical matters, then gradually about more personal topics. He was considering a position teaching at a school in a low-income neighborhood that had a special history program he'd helped develop. I was contemplating a career shift toward nonprofit marketing. We were both changing, growing in directions that perhaps we needed to discover separately. In late August, almost 4 months after he left, we met for coffee. It was awkward at first, neither of us quite knowing how to be around each other in this new reality where we were neither strangers nor partners. "You look good," he said, and meant it. The constant stress that had become my baseline state had faded, leaving me more present, more grounded. "So do you," I replied, noticing the ease in his shoulders that had been missing for so long. We talked about our lives, our plans. Careful, measured conversations that skirted around the central question: was there any way back from where we had ended up? As we prepared to leave, I gathered my courage. "David, I need to ask, is this it for us? Really and truly over?" He didn't answer immediately, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that reminded me of our earliest days together. "I don't know," he said finally. "I think we both needed this time apart. I needed to remember who I am outside of your expectations, and maybe you needed the same." "I did," I admitted. "I lost myself somewhere along the way, became someone I never intended to be." He nodded. "The thing is, Emma, I can't go back to how things were. I won't. I wouldn't want you to," I said. "That relationship was broken. I broke it." "We both did," he said, surprising me with his generosity. "But whatever happens next, if anything happens next, it would have to be something new. Something we build together, as equals with different strengths." It wasn't a promise. It wasn't even hope, exactly. but it was possibility, and for now that was enough. We parted with a brief, awkward hug that nevertheless felt more genuine than any interaction we'd had in the final year of our marriage. I watched him walk away, not knowing if he was walking out of my life for good or simply giving us both the space to become people who might someday find their way back to each other. Either way, I had learned the hardest lesson of my life. That true partnership isn't measured in dollars or status, but in respect, in understanding, in seeing the value of what each person brings to the relationship, whether it shows up on a balance sheet or in the less quantifiable but no less vital currency of purpose and meaning. My husband was gone, but perhaps someday, two better versions of ourselves might find a way to begin again.